This episode of iFanboy is brought to you by GoDaddy.com. For domain purchases, web hosting, and lots of other web services, go to GoDaddy.com and get your piece of the internet. Use coupon code iFanboy to get 10% off your purchases. And Netflix. www.netflix.com/iFanboy will get you a free 2-week trial. With over 45,000 titles, free shipping, and no late fees, it would be ridiculous not to have it. www.netflix.com/iFanboy.
My name is Matt Silady. I'm a San Francisco creator. I published the book The Homeless Channel last year, did the writing and art on it. And through that process of getting that book out there in the world, I've had the pleasure of working with many of our panelists today. I'm looking forward to hearing from their perspectives, the Internet Peanut Gallery. I think we've got a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. We're going to start today with some introductions. I'm going to ask all the panel members to introduce themselves, say either where they're from or where they're podcasting from, and how long they have been on the air. So we'll start down at the far end.
Well, I'm Bryan Deemer, and I'm one of the many hosts of the Comic Geek Speak podcast. We hail from Reading, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia. And we've been doing the show for in about 2 weeks. It'll be exactly 3 years. So.
We are iFanboy, Conor, Josh, and Ron. We started in New York, but now we're scattered. Ron's in San Francisco here. Josh and I are in New York, I'm hungover, so pardon my talking problems. And
we've been doing it since
November of 2005. There's Matt.
2.5 years. There you go.
So, and we've been video podcasting for a year, a little over.
Cool.
I'm Logan Hall from I Read Comics.
Oh, and I'm Lene, the other part of that show. And we've been doing it for about, I guess, 2.5 years. I was just thinking that all of the people on this panel have been doing it for about the same amount of time. So we're kind of the first wave of podcasting, as pretentious as that sounds.
Not that pretentious.
Yeah, it is pretentious.
The old guard. I'm Christopher Neseman from Around Comics. I'm Christopher Neseman from Around Comics. I'm not Tom Caters. We're based in Chicago, the greatest city in the world. Thank you very much. Representing today for Sal.
All week with this.
We've been broadcasting or podcasting for about 2 years, and that's us. We talk about comics.
Have you had any surprising interactions with professionals?
I think every interaction with a professional is surprising. I think we're kind of lucky that they talk to us. I think because a lot of the pros don't really they're starting to. But in the past couple of years, they've just figured out that podcasting is a way to get the word out about their books. But it was a little tough getting started, trying to explain what you're doing and how and why and stuff like that. So.
Well, last summer, I think it's about June, we had Matt Fraction on the show. And of course, he's one of these guys that a lot of people really like. But some people don't get it, and that includes myself. And we had him on the show, and after I had read the first couple issues of Casanova, and we were talking about it, and I said, look, man, I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass. I'm going to be honest, and I think that I don't get this book. I don't understand what you're trying to do. The artwork is cool, but it's really confusing. I can't follow the story. I don't get it. And instead of being a prick, he was very honest. He said, oh, no, I don't intend everyone to get it. I know for a fact that this is going to be totally not people's deal. And he was so cool about it. And then it was only a couple weeks later that I saw him at HeroesCon, and I talked to him personally, and I had thought about it for a couple more weeks. Based on your replies, now I think I want to keep reading Casanova, because now I want to figure out how long it's going to take me to get it.
It's like
Yesterday, Robert Kirkman wrote Conor's head like this. It was a moment.
A while ago, I reviewed Why the Last Man, and I really didn't like it, and I still don't like it. And I thought I gave some pretty good reasons why I personally don't like it. And a huge flame war broke out over on Bryan K. Vaughan's website, his own forum. And people were saying all kinds of nasty things and were attacking me personally. And he shut that thread down and sent me email apologizing to me for the way his fans had behaved. And I thought that was so classy of him. And in his email to me, he said, I respect your opinion, you don't like it. I hope you'll pick up something else that I've done and like it more, and I'm really sorry that people were insulting you. And that's about as good as you can get from a creator, and I totally respect him for doing that. I think it's great. And I have read other things he's liked and liked it more. It was just that one book. So I thought that was great. That's what a professional is.
It's funny, you know, when you mention things like that, when you start talking to people, you actually learn like who the really nice guys are. Like Bryan Vaughn is one of those people like, wow, he's really cool. Like, and you want to support his work and you want to like him because of things like that.
So you've all been doing it a couple years now, and this the drive to do these podcasts obviously comes out of your love and joy you have for the medium, and it's fun. Is there any point where it has become a grind, or that it starts switching to work as opposed to something that you really look forward to doing? Or
yes.
Yes. It's a real tough balancing act, and you know, some of you folks may know that our show's going on a little bit of a hiatus right now, and if you hadn't heard, you kind of burn out. You know, we've all had, you know, moments where it's like, you know what, I'm going to stop reading for a couple weeks or a month or so because I'm not really finding the joy in comics like I should be. But whenever you do a show every week or twice a week, and it starts to turn into this thing where it's like I have to get up, not have to, because what we do is fun. But yeah, after a while, it can turn into a little bit of a grind. And whenever you find yourself not being as positive about this medium that we love and this hobby that is more than that for us in a lot of ways, and you find yourself like, do I want to do this tonight? It's like, okay, it's time to take, you know, a couple weeks off or a month off and come back at it recharge. So yeah, it can be a little bit of a grind. You know, 8 hours of editing on a Sunday can be a grind.
Stop editing so much. Stop talking so much. Do it for like an hour and you're good. You know, I almost take the opposite tack on that because, you know, I had a day job that sucked. So in comparison, all I kind of need to do is, you know, the hour a week that we record our audio podcast, that is the best part of my week. And it's totally fun. And I would think that I would be getting sick of it by now.
And the hour it takes to set it up is the worst part of your week.
Oh, God. What's wrong this time? You know what? There's certain times where you have to read books in a week and like they're kind of not good. But that's about as bad as it ever gets. It's still fun, and for us what I think makes it worth it is there's all this feedback coming constantly. Like from the website, emails and stuff like that, and that totally keeps you going. So I guess if you were doing it in a vacuum, I could get totally sick of it, but you know, thanks to the people who are listening and interacting with us, or a huge part of it, like that, it really helps.
In some weeks, you know, we have a Book of the Month club, and then we have to review 6 issues of the first 6 issues of some series, and we got something else to read, and then there's a Book of the Month encore we have to do, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I can't read that novel I want to read because I have literally 27 comics that I need to read by next Sunday or something. So that can be like, okay, what's the deal? But again, it comes down to the listeners. I mean, we have a lot of listeners who the show is important for because they went to college and then they moved to Minnesota and they don't have any comic reading friends and they're totally isolated, and we're the only connection they have to the medium. And when we get those emails and they say, thank you, because you make my job go better and you rekindle my love of comics, then it never gets old, and I'll keep doing it till I'm 80 if they'll keep listening, because if it helps them, then that's worth every ounce of effort we put into it. I mean,
my podcast is like at the opposite end of the spectrum of Comic Geek Speak because mostly it's just me, sometimes Logan, and it's really hard to do it when it's just you because I have a job and I've got other things that I need to do, and I do another podcast that's about Star Trek, and fortunately on the other show, my co-host kind of keeps me going to that, but when it's just me, it can be really hard. Like you said, you got to sit down and go, all right, what do I want to say about this, and what did I read, and how can I balance this with the stuff that I liked that I read this week against this piece of crap that I have to find something nice to say about it. And I'm really glad that Logan is on the show as much as he is, because we make plans to do things, like when we go to do movie reviews, we know we're going to go see the movie, we're going to sit in the car afterwards and talk about it, so that's the impetus for getting it out there.
Well, I hear you guys mentioning a lot about the feedback you've been getting. One thing I noticed when I was looking at some of the websites is it seems like things are moving even past just the podcast or the video cast, and there's some community building going on at some of your sites. You want to talk a little bit about that and how that, why you're doing that, and how that interacts with your podcast?
Well, when we started, we had a private forum that just like the guys on the show could, because before we started doing the podcast, we didn't get together as regularly as we do now, so it was a way for us to keep in touch. And then we started the show, and we said, what do you think about if we open up a forum for everyone? And we said, all right, what the heck? And so we got some people, and then we got some more people, and we kind of said right from the beginning, and Chris, you were there very early on, where we said we're not going to be every other forum on the internet. We're going to be nice. We're going to have no flaming, none of that stuff. It's prohibited, right? And we're
why I got banned?
Yeah. And then, so as new people joined, they kind of went, wow, this is amazing. It's actually nice. And then they stayed there, and then they kept joining. And then people became friends, and they're PMing each other without being involved with us. And then they're getting together and going out together. I mean, Chris, you guys,
around comics. One of the initial seeds of that was CGS Chicago.
Right, and it was so cool. I remember seeing those pictures of you guys in the bars. I mean, that was awesome. We're like, these guys are like friends now, only because they met on the forum.
We started iFanboy.com in 2000, partially similar to what you guys are doing. We had an email list with our friends, and so we said, I work, my day job is web stuff, really boring. But I said, why don't we turn this list into a website? It'd be great, and our friends could talk on this website, very similar to that. So we put up the website, and our friends stopped coming. And nobody else came. Actually, we had one guy from Florida who just would come and post once a week, and he kept us going literally for 5 years. But then we started doing our audio podcast in 2005, and then people started coming to the website, and they started staying, and they started commenting, and they started emailing us.
I remember the first time people had conversations with themselves that we had nothing to do with. I was like, oh my God, look, you're not doing it.
Yeah. And so and then we extended that out to the video show, and we added our forums, and the forums, like Bryan said, literally exploded to the point where I can't keep up. I'm notorious. Like Conor and Josh, they kind of post way more than me, but I go and I read, and I'm like, there literally be hundreds of posts since I last checked, and I find it shocking. And then we start going to conventions and see people. We meet people at parties. People come to these kind of panels, stuff like that, and then people meet up with each other, and they're doing the same kind of thing. And it's amazing to think that you're the focal point to do that. And honestly, that's what makes it. Whenever I get kind of tired of doing it, it's just like, yeah, but I know that these few hundred people are waiting for it, and I don't want to let them down. So yeah.
It also works both ways in that we've gotten show ideas from people on the website and the forums. Why don't you guys do a show on this? And we think, yes, why don't we do that show?
Because we're running out of ideas.
Contact@ifanboy.com.
So there's a bit of they have a bit of a hand in the shows as well, which builds the community feel.
We love our forum. We love the interaction that we have, but it's something I think a couple of folks had mentioned down the road is kind of the friendships that have been developed because of this crazy, silly show about funny books that we do. I talk to Ron probably once a week. I talk to Chris Marshall from Collected Comics Library weekly. I talk to David Price from Marvel Noise, and Vince B from who I met through the CGS forums and did bullpen bulletins. These are guys that I call just to chit chat with. Maybe not about comics, maybe just about general life stuff. There are the listeners that we've had, folks that I've met for the first time, in the last couple of days that know my voice from the last 2 years, and I've never met them face to face. And I have all these great friendships that have been cultivated because of this. And whenever I I'm in San Francisco. I've never been west of the Rockies. You know how exciting this is for me, and it's because I get together with a group of friends on Friday night and drink beer and talk about comic.
And the first question was about the relationship with the professionals. That's fun and everything, but I'm much happier. I get much more. I'm friends with Chris and Tom now, and we're friends with Augie, and we're friends with Chris.
Augie, if you're not listening to Augie the Bleeds Pipeline podcast, that's the show you need to be listening to every Tuesday. It's fantastic.
Plug.
Yep. Plug.
Keep his pipes and all the podcasts.
Augie was the first one. He was the first one podcasting. He's a columnist for Comic Book Resources, and he's the kind of person that we used to see at San Diego. And actually, we were like, oh, there's that Augie guy. And and then we start talking once we start podcasting. And now he and I email because he also works in computer programming. So we email maybe 10 emails a day. And it's some about comics, but it actually more recently it's been more about photography.
Big Brother.
Big Brother, yeah, Big Brother.
What's all the hubbub?
We interrupt this program with breaking news. Revision 3 Radar is tracking a new show, and it's coming in from the Pacific and moving at an alarming pace, threatening to shatter programming conventions as we know them. Viewers are being cautioned to watch with care.
One do-it-yourselfer, one web prowler, one nerd bird, one rad scientist, and their fearless producer. It's brainy, it's zany, it's pop siren, and it's not for the faint of mind.
So you guys are really putting yourselves out there, and I've noticed in the industry sometimes comic creators, when they go online, they almost form sort of their online persona, which may be an exaggerated version of themselves, or gin it up to be a little more entertaining. How close
we were going to talk about Rick Remender.
You just screwed me on the job. No, but how close to what you present in your podcast is that person compared to who you are, I guess, when you're not on the air?
It's exactly the same. I am just as foul-mouthed and abrasive in real life as I am on my podcast.
It's fairly accurate.
I'm a woman in real life. It took a lot of work to get this looking like this is not real. It's a fake beard.
Well, no, I think that I believe the three of us, we were friends, now, going back to college, and we just, record our conversations, so we're fairly real. But
we're all completely transparent. We tell personal stories, when we get not on purpose, but if it comes up in a tangent or whatever, you're relating, and all of a sudden, like I was, not that long ago, I was telling my horrible 3-day or kidney stone ordeal with surgery and everything. I don't have to say that, and sometimes it's weird.
You don't. Anyone that's obviously had a first podcast, it's a little into the mic can be like this big, and so you're trying to be a radio guy from Chicago, and so it's like, oh, I should say this or I shouldn't say this, but after you do it for long enough, it is just conversations that you're having.
Going back and listening to some of our podcasts, I've noticed that two things are different than who I am normally. So one, I laugh a lot on those podcasts. I don't know why. I'm like a giggle. Absolutely like this giggler. I don't know, not giggle. I don't think I giggle as much. And second is I think because we go and watch a lot of movies, I gay it up a lot. Oh my God, Chris Evans was super hot in this. I love that. Yeah.
That's true. You don't do that at work.
I don't do that at the office. I think I keep that a little more. That's my secret identity.
What Chris said is really important to know is that I think the reason why we are all successful like we are is because we are genuine. And people can sense when you're not being genuine. And one of the things they respond to is that we are being truthful. Whether or not they agree with what we say or what we like about it, what we not like about it, but they respect the fact that we are giving a true opinion. And that is one of the most commented on things we get is people say, you guys are genuine. And that really shines through no matter what you do.
Do you listen to your own shows? Repeatedly?
Just my parts.
To be
He does.
When you edit, you go and edit out the other guys and kind of your own copy of it.
A lot of times I'll make a bad joke and I'll get no response from either of them, and I'll cut that out because it makes me look bad. You know what? I always try to, not every show, but I do try to listen to them because we'll notice the things that we do subconsciously. Like, we'll have words that we say all the time, admittedly. And ostensibly in Wheelhouse, these are certain words. So and awesome are other words. But you do pick up on the things that you're doing, the things that you're not doing right. I think that like a sort of level of quality control.
But to actually answer the question, yes, we do have. Someone's got to edit the show. Someone's got to do the show notes. Someone, so that's listening. The video show, if anyone's ever video edited, you can do the show by heart in your head after you're done editing because you've heard the same phrase 14 times. You just want to tweak that one little bit. And I don't want to watch the video shows ever after I finish editing because
No, I don't.
I can't watch certain things over and over and over again. That's just the nature of video editing. But you have to. You can't just put it out there and go. You have to quality control. We have to make sure it sounds okay and everything works.
I'll listen to an episode that I edit. I'll listen to it 3 times. And it sounds silly, but obviously we listen to it while we're recording it, and that's part of the recording process is just know how conversation is flowing, etc. And then whenever I'm doing the edit, you're obviously listening to it again, and then I'll usually try and listen to a clean edit to make sure that everything worked out fine.
We just, we simply don't edit. We press start, we press stop.
I'm shocked.
And we let it go. I mean, unless like
we hate you.
And that's been kind of like part of the show, the fact that it's very natural, and because we don't edit, we're not trying to put on a show, we're simply recording what we say. And I think there's a bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
And so I don't re-listen to episodes, but Peter, the producer of the show, he probably listens to each episode 5 to 10 times over some period of time. I mean, because he's the historical nut, and he memorizes everything there could possibly be to know. So he knows show trivia like he knows comic trivia because he's obsessed with it. And but personally, I don't think the other guys, well, maybe Shane, but like those other guys never listen to any show ever. I don't think.
I think I only ever listen to it when I'm just doing the regular pass-through editing, and I try to do like you guys. I just don't want to take out everything. I would like to not edit. I would like to just drop those in, put the music in, and have it be great. But I often find that there's these long pauses where I'm flipping through trying to find the panel that I want to talk about because I'm too stupid to mark the stuff before I actually do it. It's like, oh, where's that panel? I have to read it, and you hear the sound of the pages flipping. Not good radio.
So we've been talking a lot about podcasts so far, but we also happen to have 7 very outspoken industry pundits up here. And to try to keep things positive, I'm interested in what you guys think the best industry trend right now that you're seeing. Because I know we raised our hands about the event comics and how we're all exhausted and so forth. But what do you see that's working right now that's good for comics in the future?
More collected editions. Books in bookstores because they reach a much huger audience than the comic stores ever will. So, original graphic novels, cheap trade paperbacks, all that stuff is very, very important. That's why I think that's the future of comics. I think the floppies days are numbered, and it's all going to be books in a bookstore.
It's funny because
we had this fight last night at dinner.
Yeah, we get this argument a lot because I love single issues. I love them.
And you'll always be able to go back to those long boxes.
I know, I will. And trust me, and trying to coordinate moving across country from New York to California and move 30 long boxes is no easy feat. But but I think Bryan is right. What I think is really interesting is we look at success by the number of comics that are sold, single issues in that top 300, but we don't see any reporting on how many Amazon selling, or how many Barnes & Noble selling, or how many Borders is selling, and that's going to be the real key. But I think on top of getting them in the hands of people, if you notice, the best trend in the past, since we've been doing this in the past 5 years, has been a kind of return to quality. Because you can put as much as you want out there. If it's crap, nobody's going to buy it. And so you can have 17 X titles, and if one of them's worth reading, then then the whole line's not worth anything. So it's got to be really good creators writing and drawing and making good comics.
Borders is, I don't know if you guys saw this, I think it's Borders that's doing the comic book store inside a store. Folks, that's the future. It's the LCSs. I love them. I go to my LCS every week. Mark Beatty is a personal friend of mine. He's the owner of my comic shop. I love him like a brother, and his business doesn't have a real bright future to it. And it comes down to foot traffic. Plain and simple, it comes down to foot traffic. The internet is cutting into that. There's other entertainment forms are cutting into it. The bookstores are really looking like they're going to be the future of mass market sequential art, whatever you want to say it, and that's I firmly believe that's where it's going, and that's a good thing.
We all just lived through the music revolution in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's going to be the exact same thing. You're going to see the mom and pop stores starting to go under, unfortunately, and which I hate because there's stores like Isotope here in San Francisco, Meltdown in LA, Rocket Ship in in Brooklyn that are just awesome stores, and I want them to live because I love that. But as soon as the big boxes start getting involved, you see the smaller stores go, and then you see the internet cut in. And I know everybody kind of, like the digital comics thing is a hot topic, and we don't know where it's going to play out. But you can't avoid that. It's when you can get rid of because paper is expensive. I'm sure Bryan can attest to that. I mean, I used to do print as well, and it's like Chris, you work in print and stuff like that. I mean, it's hard. It's to get to a point where if the moment somebody figures out how to really read a good comic on the iPhone, you're gonna watch it explode. So.
I think to pick up on what he said, the other thing that goes along with that is that I think that it hasn't caught on to a huge, because most comics are still superhero comics, but I think that there's a lot more quality and diversity in the books you're reading. There's stories about other things than superheroes, and that was the one way you get it. But like Why the Last Man was a huge book, and whether you like it or not, and having stories like that, and in places like Vertigo and Oni and others who are escaping me, they're doing all sorts of different things, and I love Image, especially Image, of course. I love that there are books that you can give to people and recommend to people that challenge all the expectations of what it is. This doesn't read a comic book. I don't like superheroes. This is a story. It moves you like any movie or like any book you've ever read. And I think that when you want to talk about growing the whole base of everything and putting them in bookstores and having the collected editions, that's really important. And that's like one of the things that I think our video show we really concentrated on doing is just breaking down the stereotypes. And just like Matt's book was. So I like your book for that reason exactly. I was like, and we were just talking about like Andy Watson's book, and it's like Breakfast Afternoon. It's such it's just a story about people, and it's so personal, and like you can do that in comics really well, and people don't know it. And so one of the things we like to do is to make sure that, and I love that trend.
I think in mainstream comics, the move to other media has been huge, especially DC doing the direct-to-DVD stuff. That they finally figured out that they should be making animated movies that aren't shit.
How do you go about recruiting new listeners for your podcast? So if someone's starting a podcast out there, how do you build an audience?
That's the trick, isn't it?
That's the $1 million question. If you're a brand new podcast, you want to build an audience, well, you get it on iTunes, you butter up to all the other podcasters out there, send them in promos, ask to be on their shows, or just get on the forums and be friends with every other comic fan out there, and eventually they'll listen to your show. If you already have a show and you're trying to expand it, that's even harder, because that's what we've all been trying to do for 3 years, and we've I think at this point we've kind of maxed out on the potential audience of current comic fans who are big internet junkies who own iPods. I think that we're about where we can go with that without personally introducing ourselves to every single comic fan in the world and saying, by the way, you should listen to our podcast.
When we started, there weren't as many choices. So we were just lucky enough to be amongst the first, and there was only 50 or so podcasts when you went and search on iTunes or comics. Now there's 150 to 200 comic book podcasts, so it's harder now to break through and get noticed. And people ask us that a lot, and what I try to tell them is to try to be specific and specialize, because there are tons of general comic podcasts or the Hero of the Week Books podcast, but if you can find a niche that's not being filled, then there's an audience in there for you. But it's difficult because there's so many choices.
I mean, I think that's our challenge now. I mean, like what's been interesting the past 2-3 years has been, we all started doing podcasts and we just showed up. And and so while I agree and slightly disagree, Bryan, that we've kind of hit the ceiling of kind of comic geeks and podcasts, whatever, is that I sit down and I look at the Diamond charts and I see New Avengers sells 100,000 copies, and I sit down and I look at Apple's stock filing.
They delivered.
They delivered, yes, sure, yes, but they delivered 100,000 copies, so potentially 100,000 copies are out there. And I look at Apple's, stock filing and how many iPods are sold and stuff like that. And if you ask me, now it's just now we're just getting started. Now the work is going to start. And it's just a matter of looking for unique distribution channels, not depending on iTunes, looking for ways to get in front of people, and the viral thing, tell your friends, all that kind of stuff, because for everybody who's in the know, the thousands of people who listen to podcasts, for me, I see an unlimited audience to go after.
And we used to say that the dance floor was full. Well, now the dance floor is even more full. It's turned into a mosh pit. And so how do you get more listeners? I don't know. We're really lucky because we started when we did. To start around comics right now, forget it. Yeah.
All the good URLs are taken too. So.
So on behalf of WonderCon, I appreciate you all coming to attend the podcasting extravaganza panel, but more than anything, I'd like to thank the podcasters for coming up here and sharing your experiences with all of us.
Ron from iFanboy, who's really got to put this together. So Ron, thank you very much.
I want to thank everyone for coming and listening to the shows and supporting the stuff we really like to do, and without you guys, it's so great, but like, I really mean it, that makes it possible. Thanks everyone. Enjoy the production.